One of the most misunderstood signals a woman gives, especially when she's secretly in love but afraid to show it, is when she pulls away just as emotional closeness begins to form. To many, this appears counterintuitive. Why would someone who desires connection create distance? But human emotions, particularly those tied to vulnerability and attachment, don't always operate in a straight line. When a woman has deep feelings for you, yet isn't ready to confront them, or fears the consequences of expressing them, she may resort to emotional retreat as a self-protection mechanism. This is particularly common in women who've experienced emotional instability in the past, or who have learned through disappointment or trauma that expressing affection can lead to loss or rejection. So instead of leaning in, they step back. Instead of confessing, they go silent. And instead of showing interest, they may act indifferent or even cold. It's not because the feelings aren't there. It's because those feelings are too intense to manage openly. You'll notice it in how she changes when things start to feel too good. She may have been open, warm, and engaging initially, but as soon as there's a hint of mutual emotional weight, maybe you shared something personal or she felt particularly seen, she'll begin to withdraw, not because she doesn't care, but because she cares too much. That emotional closeness threatens her sense of control. And when control is gone, fear rushes in. Here's the paradox. The more she wants you, the more she might pull back. It's a defense, not a dismissal. She's creating space, not to detach, but to analyze, to soothe her own uncertainty, to assess whether it's safe to feel this deeply. It's how the psyche manages emotional overload. When love feels risky, the subconscious often turns to avoidance as a coping mechanism. In these moments, many men misinterpret her behavior and either push harder or walk away. But what's required is presence without pressure. If you truly want to understand her, meet that withdrawal not with pursuit, but with patience. Let her know she's seen and accepted, even in her silence. The way you respond to her retreat will define whether she ever feels safe enough to stop running. And here's what's crucial. This dynamic isn't about manipulation. It's about fear versus safety. She's craving connection, but only on grounds where her emotional defenses don't have to be dismantled forcibly. Show her emotional maturity. Let her unfold on her own terms. So the next time you feel her pulling away, don't immediately assume disinterest. Ask yourself, what is she afraid of? And how can I create safety instead of pressure? Because sometimes the quietest retreat is the loudest cry for emotional safety. Let that be your guide. If she pulls away, it may be the very proof that you matter more than she's ready to admit. Another sign that a woman is in love with you, but scared to show it, is how she pays attention to the smallest details about you, things you might not even notice about yourself. At first glance, this might come off as simple attentiveness or friendliness, but when a woman consistently remembers the way you take your coffee, the exact words you used in a conversation weeks ago, or how your mood shifts depending on the time of day, what she's really doing is observing with emotional investment. She is seeing you not just through the eyes of interest, but through the lens of emotional attachment. This kind of detailed awareness is not casual. It's intuitive. It's driven by a deep, quiet longing to feel close to you, even if she doesn't feel ready to verbalize that longing. Love, when unspoken, still finds a language. And often that language shows up in how she sees and responds to your world, even when you aren't asking for it. She may ask about your day not because it's routine, but because she genuinely wants to understand what affects your spirit. She might notice when something's off in your tone and gently check in, disguised as casual concern, but really, it's her heart leaning toward you. But even in those moments, she often pulls herself back. Why? Because acknowledging how deeply she feels makes her vulnerable. And vulnerability, especially for someone who's not sure if her love is reciprocated, can feel like emotional exposure without a safety net. This is the paradox of hidden affection. She cares more than she dares to admit, but because she can't risk the emotional consequences of being wrong, of being rejected or misunderstood, she tucks that affection into micro-accessions, subtle responses, and careful emotional calibration. Her feelings show up in how she curates her interactions with you, how she listens, and how she recalls things about you with precision. These aren't surface behaviors, they're subconscious manifestations of affection. In many cases, this sensitivity is even stronger when she feels emotionally unsafe due to past experiences. If she's been betrayed, dismissed, or neglected in the past, love will come carefully cloaked in caution, and her attention to detail becomes a way of maintaining emotional closeness without admitting emotional risk. So if you ever wonder whether she truly feels something, don't just listen to her words. Watch the way she remembers you. Listen to the way she brings up something you said once in passing. Pay attention to the questions she asks and the care behind them, because when someone is truly in love, silence isn't empty, it's full of meaning. And actions, no matter how small, often speak the loudest truths. Sometimes love doesn't come with grand declarations. Sometimes it shows up in quiet observation, in consistent care, in the way she remembers you fully, faithfully, and fearfully. Don't overlook that. What she notices may be exactly what she wishes she could say. Another profound sign that a woman is in love with you but too scared to show it is her emotional inconsistency. This isn't about mood swings or general unpredictability. It's about the internal battle she's quietly navigating, a conflict between what she feels and what she fears. One moment, she may seem deeply connected, responsive, even flirty. The next, she might appear distant, disinterested, or cold. To the untrained eye, this inconsistency can be confusing. But when you understand the psychology behind it, the message becomes clearer. She's struggling to manage the vulnerability that love demands. When a woman is emotionally invested but unsure of your intentions, or worse, afraid of being hurt, she often vacillates between closeness and withdrawal. This behavior is a psychological defense mechanism. She wants to open up and be near you, but the fear of rejection or appearing too much pulls her back. So she tests the waters. She gives a little, waits to see if it's safe, then retreats before exposing too much of her emotional truth. This internal push and pull creates a pattern that might seem like mixed signals, but it's really about protection. She's not playing games, she's guarding her heart, and that inconsistency is her way of maintaining emotional control in a space where she feels incredibly exposed. Love makes her feel both alive and terrified. You'll see it in the way she shows up fully in one moment and then disappears emotionally the next. It's the emotional equivalent of stepping forward and flinching backward all at once. What's important to understand here is that love, for many women, is not just about the feeling. It's about the risk attached to expressing it. Especially if she's been let down before, every emotional advance feels like a potential fall. Her mind says, let him know how you feel, but her heart whispers, what if he doesn't feel the same? And so the inconsistency you experience is not a reflection of disinterest, it's the signature of a silent yearning tangled in fear. If you're on the receiving end of this behavior, patience and presence are everything. Reacting with frustration or detachment will only confirm her fears. But if you respond with calm curiosity and emotional steadiness, you offer her the safety she's seeking without demanding that she confess her feelings prematurely. So when her warmth fades suddenly or she seems emotionally unavailable after a deeply connected moment, pause. Don't chase the change, just notice it. Acknowledge it without judgment. That gentle awareness alone can create the space she needs to find her way out of the fear and into the freedom to express what she truly feels. Remember, emotional inconsistency isn't always a red flag. It's often a reflection of a heart learning how to feel safely again. And if you can hold space for that process, you'll see that the woman pulling away is often the one who feels the most. Another deeply telling sign that a woman is in love with you but scared to show it is her heightened sensitivity to your opinions and reactions, particularly the way she responds to your approval or disapproval. You'll notice that your words carry more weight with her than they do with others. A passing compliment can light up her whole day, while an offhand critique can quietly linger with her, even if she doesn't admit it. That sensitivity is not random. It's rooted in the emotional power you hold in her world, even if she hasn't fully acknowledged it herself. When a woman deeply cares, her desire for emotional closeness often shows up as a subtle craving for validation. She won't say it outright because that would mean exposing her feelings, and that's what she's afraid of. But watch closely. She may seek your opinion more than necessary, ask you about your preferences, or quietly adjust her behavior based on how you react. It's her way of staying in emotional alignment with you without having to admit what she truly feels. Psychologically, this behavior comes from a place of emotional investment. People don't fear rejection from those whose opinions don't matter to them. But when a woman becomes deeply attuned to you, when your thoughts, your attention, your approval start shaping how she sees herself in your eyes, that's when you know you've touched something profound. She wants to be seen, but only in a way that affirms her worth. And because she hasn't verbalized her feelings yet, she becomes hyper aware of anything that might suggest she's losing ground with you. Sometimes this manifests in subtle ways, like the way she lights up when you notice small changes about her, or how she tenses slightly when you're distracted or critical. These micro reactions aren't about ego, they're emotional cues, indicators of her internal landscape and the role you play in it. But here's the nuance. Because she's afraid to show her feelings outright, she might mask this sensitivity with casualness or even indifference. She may pretend not to care or dismiss your input playfully, but underneath that, there's a quiet calculation. What does he really think of me? Did I say too much? Did I do something wrong? It's not insecurity, it's investment, carefully disguised as detachment. This kind of subtle behavior often gets overlooked, misread, or underestimated, but when a woman is carefully observing how you see her, reacting internally to your opinions, and adjusting herself to maintain harmony with you, you're not just a friend or an acquaintance. You've become someone emotionally significant. She feels something, perhaps more than she's ready to admit. So pay attention to the quiet shifts, the questions she asks, the way she listens a little closer when it's you speaking. In her sensitivity lies the confession she's too afraid to speak aloud. And here's the truth. When someone values your perception of them more than their comfort, they're not just hiding affection. They're guarding a love that feels too precious to risk. Another deeply revealing sign that a woman is in love with you but scared to show it lies in her emotional distance at precisely the moments when you expect closeness. It's a paradox that often confuses men. The woman who seems warm and interested suddenly becomes aloof, guarded, or even cold, just when the emotional atmosphere suggests she should lean in. But this contradiction is not a lack of interest. It's the psychological armor worn by someone who feels deeply and fears vulnerability even more. You see, love is not always expressed in closeness. Sometimes it's most visible in avoidance. When a woman creates emotional or physical distance, it might be her attempt to protect herself from the very intensity of her feelings. She may ghost a little, pull back, just as things start to get deeper, or pretend she's not affected by you. It's not rejection, it's fear. Fear of being seen too clearly. Fear that if she lets herself fall, she might not be caught. This kind of emotional retreat isn't about confusion, it's about preservation. Women who have been hurt before, or who have deeply romantic inner worlds, often believe that showing their true emotions too early might lead to heartbreak or humiliation. They think, if I distance myself now, I'll hurt less later. So instead of moving toward what they crave, they freeze, they pause, they retreat into logic or silence, hoping you won't notice the intensity behind their restraint. It's important to understand this emotional pattern without judgment. Distance doesn't mean indifference. In fact, it's often the sign of someone who cares more than she's ready to admit. She doesn't want you to see how much power you already have, how your presence softens her, how your absence unsettles her. And because she hasn't yet decided that it's safe to love you out loud, she loves you in silence. By creating a safe space for herself behind her own walls. And here's where many men make the mistake of pulling away in response. They interpret her emotional distance as disinterest and mirror it. But the truth is, that moment when she becomes distant is often the exact point when she's hoping you'll show consistency, patience, and understanding. That's the test, not a game, not manipulation, but a subconscious search for safety. She wants to know if your presence is strong enough to wait out her fear. So what do? You stay grounded. You don't chase, but you don't abandon. You let her know through calm presence and gentle attention that she doesn't have to run to be safe, that love doesn't always have to come wrapped in anxiety. Because sometimes the silence, the distance, the pause, they're not signs of the end. They're just the quiet waiting room before a love that finally feels safe enough to speak. There's a final sign that often goes unnoticed, yet it reveals everything about a woman who loves you but is afraid to show it. Her investment in your well-being, especially when there's nothing in it for her. This isn't the flashy kind of care, the performative support that expects a reward or recognition. No, it's quiet, subtle, sometimes even secret, but it's persistent. She checks in on you when you're low, remembers small details about your life, and goes out of her way to support your growth, even when she pretends it's just casual or friendly. At first glance, it might just look like kindness, but look deeper. What you'll often find is a woman who's emotionally tethered to your happiness. She might not confess her feelings, she might never say, "I love you," but she will advocate for your peace behind closed doors. She'll speak positively about you when you're not around. She'll recommend things she believes will help you, books, habits, even people, because she's quietly rooting for your success as if it were her own. That's not just support, that's love dressed in humility. And here's why this matters so much. When a woman makes emotional investments without any expectation, it often means she's negotiating with her own fear in silence. She cares so deeply, but the vulnerability of expressing that care openly feels too risky. So she channels it into actions that feel safe, giving without asking, supporting without naming it. It's not manipulation, it's emotional protection. She's trying to love you without falling apart. Many men overlook this. They confuse it for friendliness or politeness because they're looking for grand romantic gestures or direct declarations. But emotionally mature love often hides in small, consistent actions. The woman who brings you soup when you're sick, who sends a good luck message before your interview, who shares resources you didn't even know you needed, she's showing her heart in service, not seduction. Psychologically, this behavior stems from a place of cautious attachment. She wants to be close, but not too exposed. So she opts to be useful, thinking that value will speak louder than vulnerability. And in many ways, it does. If you're paying attention, her quiet care is the loudest confession she can offer. This kind of love requires you to look beyond words, to read the emotional language that isn't spoken, but is deeply felt. And if you see it, if you recognize that her acts of service are actually acts of devotion, don't dismiss it. Don't wait for her to say what she's already showing. Meet it with respect, meet it with presence, and above all, meet it with courage. Because in the end, real love rarely announces itself with a shout. It whispers through consistency, through care, and through a woman who, though scared to reveal her feelings, still chooses to show up for you when it matters most. That's not just interest. That's love in its rawest, most human form, unspoken, but undeniable.